You are listening to Business Heroine Radio for the entrepreneur who says she will and does. Join the Business Heroine community today at businessheroinemagazine.com. And now, tune into the show.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ann Perry, founder of Business Heroine, and I cannot wait for you to meet our beautiful February cover girl, Kavita J. Patel. Welcome, Kavita.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you, and it's perfect because this is the month of February and it's Valentine's Day, and Kavita is a love coach and intuitive. I want to tell you a little bit about her. She's worked with thousands of successful, ambitious, busy women who are single and struggling to meet a soulmate at their level, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So Kavita has been coined, you're going to like this, she's been coined a cross between Deepak Chopra and Judge Judy because of her spiritual meets practical methodology. She's studied ancient Eastern philosophy since she was 10 years old, and that combined with her no-nonsense approach helps women really dive beneath the surface of superficial dating rules, all those dating quote-unquote rules, and really change the patterns that have been keeping them from finding true love and the soulmate they deserve. So hundreds of women have participated in her signature course, which is called Soullevel Love. And Kavita is really quickly becoming the leading expert in love today. She's been featured throughout the media, including Fox News, CBS News, Women's Health Magazine, Women's Day Magazine, Time Out New York, and more, including the one and only Business Heroine magazine. So, yeah, it's so awesome to have you here, Kavita.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, okay. As you may know, I'm a total geek for business, and so I want to learn about love, but the burning question is, how did you become a love coach? Because it's not like there's a job listing on Craigslist, for it. So you invented your own career. How did this happen? Tell us about your story.
Yeah, totally. So, I often just start with, it was probably something that was right in front of my nose that I never knew that I could do this. You know what I mean by that is I was 10 years old and my parents, I'm Indian, so my parents were arranged marriage, and that doesn't mean that every arranged marriage is contentious like my parents was, but they would fight a lot and they didn't get along. And when I was little, even at the age of 10, I distinctly remember this, they'd be fighting, and instead of running to my room or crying in the corner or whatever, I was getting involved. I was trying to translate between my parents, Dad, this is what Mom's trying to say, Mom, this is what Dad's trying to say. And it was just this internal calling to just get involved, in their love life. And from that moment onwards, again, like I said, it was right in front of my nose, but I didn't know it. I have been literally observing, analyzing, questioning relationships, communication, male and female dynamics most of my life. And the journey was a journey. I mean, I was in corporate America for 8 years, a consultant, and looking for that calling that I know so many are. And I met this woman, and she said that she was a health coach. And when she told me she was a health coach, I was like, what is that? It's just something in those words resonated with me so deeply. And so I asked her 1,000,001 questions about how she became that and where did she go to learn that. And it was just something that I was like, I think this is the right path. And so I left corporate America and went back to nutrition school, or I went to nutrition school, I should say, and then started my own health coaching practice. And about a year into it, I knew it wasn't it. And I will tell you, I was so in the boat of this is it. This is I wanted to solidify it so badly that I had even convinced myself that this was it, And I had a great business very beginning, but it was still great,
Yeah.
And yet something wasn't jiving. It wasn't feeling fulfilling like I really wanted it to be. So I talked to a mentor of mine. I just said, I don't know what's going on, but this something is not aligned here. And so she asked me some key questions. And one of them was, what are your clients already seeing results from? And I said, and this is the first time I had ever said this out loud. I said, well, they're actually seeing, movement in their love life. Like, I love talking about it. They're getting into relationships. They're, breaking up with the wrong men. They're, having these beautiful connections in their marriages now. They're getting into these beautiful relationships that are turning into marriage and family and children and all that kind of stuff. So he said that out loud, and to my mentor, it was very clear.
Yeah.
To me, it wasn't. But
he's like, these are your nutrition clients?
Yeah,
what little potions are you serving up there?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. But I'm like oblivious on the other end of the phone, right? And she's like, so have you thought about being a relationship expert? And I was like, oh. And the honest to God truth was, in that moment, I freaked out when she said that. Like, in my head, I was like, oh my God, I've got to start all over again, and my heart was like, this could be right.
Yeah.
This could be right.
So the freak out, I want to hear about that, because like what you're pointing to here, I just feel like this has been up lately, like this sort of choosing alignment above all else. And there was something, when you heard the words health coach, there was something in that really resonated. And maybe it was the word coach, maybe it was like the kind of concept of having a business that sort of looked like that. So it was almost like the shape and form was there 90% or something, but there was something that wasn't quite it. And so it was like, all along this way, you were just tapping into what's more true than that, like really finding that alignment. And so when you freaked out, what was that about? Was it like, oh crap, now I have to start over and I wasted all this time? Was it the thought of actually claiming that professionally? What was the freak out?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I think it was a couple of things. So one was, like just the brain, right? The fear in the brain was like, you've got to rebrand, you've got to redo, you've got a whole new target market. Like the list that you already have is like non-existent now, how are you going to transfer all of this into a whole nother business? So that's like what the head was saying. And another part of my head was saying, well, yeah, I mean, this makes sense, like from what you just said. And yes, like noticing that you love talking about this, and like, can you really be successful at that? Like, is it really going to be something you've already said to yourself that health coaching was it? Now, is this really it? Or is this another iteration of something that's not it?
Yeah.
So a lot of fears.
Yeah, it's wild, like especially hearing you say, could this really be successful? And it was the thing that was right under your nose. And I hear that a lot with, the emerging entrepreneurs. It's like the thing that we're actually best at, that's so natural, it's like breathing. We just can't even help do it, We're doing it for fun, for free anyway, or like we just, you just find yourself doing it. And it's like, can that thing really be the business? Can it be as easy, and easiness isn't even the word, but like as in flow, as natural as just how you show up in the world? Can that be your business? So I love that so much. And it obviously that was your path. You were doing it since you were 10 years old, but that's the intuitive part. You just sort of knew where to, explore with your parents' relationship and all that. So I want to talk about actually the love. Like, I want to dive into your intuitive ability around this, and like, your approach to love coaching, and what love has to do, how that richness of love can support in other areas of life, including business. And so I know that's just a mouthful. I don't even know what the question is in there, but teach us your ways. Tell us what there is to know. Yeah.
Yeah, I will actually tell you like how love and money, and love and business, love and calling, love and career are so connected, like so connected. And I'll use me as an example, because one of my truths is that, if if I haven't worked on it in within myself, then who am I to talk about it, you know? And so for me, you know, I'm married and we have been through a journey. And in like one sentence, I can sum it up as we went from breakup, where he broke up with me, to makeup, to getting back together about a year and a half later, to marriage, and then close to divorce within the first 2 years of our marriage. And now I'm happily can say that we're so connected and in love, and we have that soul level love that I now talk about, now being married for over 8 years. And I can honestly say that at one point in my life, many points in my life, I didn't even know that this kind of soul level love even existed. Like I didn't even know. Like it felt like things that Shakespeare talked about and things that you see in movie and things that I hear in songs, but you know, wasn't something that I understood or had experienced in my life. And I didn't even see examples of that around me, to be honest. So, you know, it was impossible. It was in the realm of impossibility at the time. And so my journey, when 2 years into being married, when again I was faced with like him pulling away, he said to me, you know, he had pulled away 4 years into dating, and I thought we were actually going to get engaged. In fact, we were supposed to go to Cincinnati, where I'm from, where I grew up, and over the holidays. And I thought he was going to propose because, you know, it's the holidays. My parents are there, whatever. And I told my closest friends, this is it. And 2 days before leaving, he calls me up and breaks up with me. And I was, you know, like torn up inside, like devastated. Didn't even understand how this was possible, really, because I was so blindsided. And, you know, a lot of things transpired over the year and a half that we were apart. But, you know, in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out everything I did wrong, everything I did right, everything he did wrong, everything he did right, and then find my version of love, you know? And I thought that's all I needed to do. You know, that's all I thought that was necessary. And I thought I had learned what I needed to learn. And a year and a half later, we're back together. Then 2 years into marriage, I was right back in the exact same patterns that I had the first time. And it was like I couldn't even help it, right? And there was this one day where he just said to me, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And now, you know, in my head, I'm like, holy crap, I'm here again. I'm married. Like our families have merged. We're like made these vows. Like, how am I here again? Like, how is this happening? And that was a real wake up call. And that's when I realized, like, as smart as I am, as independent as I am, as successful as I am as a woman, like I can't figure this out by myself. You know? And I sought out help. And I went back to my spiritual roots. I grew up with gurus from like the Himalayan mountains that would meditate for years. And like I had them in yoga camps. They stayed at my house. I heard them lecture to me. They gave me advice. Like I grew up with all of that. And so I needed to get back to that. I went to seminars, got coached, I learned from people that had what I wanted, you know? And through that process, I started to see all of these subconscious ways that I was sabotaging love, like all of these subconscious ways that I didn't even know, right? And I could see it in others, but I couldn't see it for myself, you know? And when I started to see that it was profound, and I saw there was a gap in what I was learning. So it was understanding, okay, these kind of sabotaging ways that I'm having in my love life is connected to how I saw love with my parents. That was a big part of it, you know, and I started to see all those connections for myself. And yet I wasn't able to move through those triggers that come up for us in the moment, you know? And so I was like, what is this gap? And I just am one of those people, and I'm sure you are too, Anne, but like I get infatuated with something and I've got to like crack the code on it. And so like that's what happened. And I just started to try out all these different things for myself. And I had these really profound conversations with my parents that just shifted the belief that I had completely. And it completely transformed my relationship with Hummel, my husband. And we didn't go to therapy. We didn't go together. He didn't do anything. And I'm not saying he didn't have any problems. He does. But I took on my side of things, and it transformed the entire relationship.
Yeah.
And that was really powerful for me to see.
Yeah.
And the connection to that with my work and my career, my calling, was actually simultaneous. So when I had this very vulnerable conversation with Hummel one day after having these conversations with my parents, I had a really vulnerable conversation with him about my biggest fear. And one of my biggest fears, and it seems to be normal as I say it, but this was huge for me internally, and I have actually kept it from him for years. And one of my biggest fears was that, like, when we have kids, and we still don't have kids, by the way, not for lack of trying, but it's just isn't where we're at yet. But
yeah.
I was already there. Like, as a woman, you're kind of already dreaming about what your children are going to be like, and what kind of, at least I am, what kind of soil am I planting right now for them? So, my biggest fear was that I was going to have to give them religion, culture, and all of that all by myself. Like, that I didn't have a partner in that with me. And I didn't feel strong enough yet to do that. And so I was nagging him to, like, come to temple and do all these things on the surface, but I had never told him that my biggest fear was that I was going to have to do it all by myself.
Wow.
And when I said that to him, it was the most terrifying moment, because if he had said to me, well, yes, then I would have to question everything, right? Like, our entire relationship. And so I said it, and he, of course, was like, I was met with open arms and was like, of course I'm in this with you. Yeah, we're doing this together. I can't even believe that you would think that this is all on you, like, amazing. And that breakthrough conversation was huge for our relationship. And I will tell you, that was right on the cusp of me then stepping into my calling as a coach.
I can feel just energetically how it's all connected. I loved how you said that. You're like, love and career, love and money, love and calling are so connected. And, I often say that, spirituality and business aren't separate. Personal life and business are not separate. It's all part of this journey. And, what you shared about how you just went inside and you shifted yourself, and not that there's not a time and place for couples counseling, and not that it's a one-side street and all that, whatever, but it's like you dove into your own growth and depth, and from that, the transformation that happened. And that's exactly what happens in business. That's exactly what happens with money. That's exactly what happens with all of it, is like, we transform ourselves, and then our outer experiences shift along with it. What a powerful story. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I'm really curious, you mentioned about these patterns. Like, you said there were these patterns that you just found yourself in, and maybe hadn't ever recognized they were patterns until you did. But then even when you did, you're like, well, now what do I do about it? I want to hear more about these patterns. And I know that you have identified 4 love types. And so I'm curious if you can kind of give us a little glimpse of what that's about. Like, what love type were you? And what does that have to do with how does that connect with the patterns and shifting those subconscious patterns that open everything up once they're shifted?
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So the patterns, so I'll just give you my example. And this is for anyone, whether you're single, in a relationship, married, just divorced, just got out of something. Like, this is relevant for anyone in any state in love. Okay. But basically, because when I tell my story, you could translate that to be like, because I'm married or whatever. And I just don't want you to do that. So, so what I realized that was blocking me in love, that was having me push him away unknowingly. I mean, he's absolutely the love of my life, but I unknowingly was pushing it away, was that when I looked back at my parents' relationship, and this is when we were born, our first role models, whether good or bad, whether powerful or not, our first role models around love are our parents. It's the first time that we're understanding what love feels like, looks like, between us and our mom and our dad, plus what we're observing between them, within the family, as we're getting older and being raised. So those are all kind of our first impressions of love, and those impressions are in our subconscious. And so most of us don't, as we've gotten older, haven't actually tapped into what were those subconscious ideas, beliefs, thoughts that were planted way back then, but they are actually creating your love life right now. Like, they are in the driver's seat of your love life. You think you are, but you're not. It's actually those subconscious beliefs. So when I looked at my parents' relationship, I would have told you, and I thought I knew everything about them, by the way, but like, I would have told you for 30 plus years that they should have gotten a divorce, but they didn't because of culture and religion. In my viewpoint of them, the only reason they are still together today, they're still together, which is beautiful, but they were still together because the only page that they were on that was the same was culture and religion. Everything else was like, mom says A, dad hears Z, And so that was my perspective. So what I didn't know was happening is, in my marriage, I was trying to ensure that Hemel and I were culturally, spiritually on the same wavelength, always. Because in my subconscious, if we weren't, it was going to end. Like, it wasn't going to last. Meanwhile, it was choking the relationship. It was choking me. I had very little freedom, felt very little freedom, felt very alone, even within the relationship. And so, and I was pushing him away with that, and I didn't know that. So once I realized that awareness, I was like, oh, okay. So that was the first step. Now, awareness isn't going to cut it completely, right? So I had to get into action in a different way to understand the other side of that belief, to prove it wrong, almost, right? So I went to my parents, and again, like I said, I thought I knew everything, and I asked them. This is a beautiful question to ask, especially if you resist your parents' relationship, which many of us do. But if you idealize it, it's the opposite question. So I'll tell you this in just a second. But I went to my parents, I talked to my mom, and I talked to my dad, and at different times, and I just said, what is it that brought you together? Like, yes, you were arranged, but you had to say yes, because you can say no. You can say no. So you did say yes, and you said no to others. Why? What occurred in that moment? And I heard about things I'd never heard of, because they were just so easily able to complain about each other, not actually reveal what brought them together. Was love letters. Like, my dad lived in Chicago and my mom lived in Cincinnati, and they told me about like moving, going, like, my mom went through a blizzard just to see my dad for, one day, from a trip from Cincinnati to Chicago. So little things like that completely changed the way that I saw them. And I let it in, right? Like, I had this moment where I was like, I could still keep believing what I've seen for 30 plus years, or the evidence that I've given to myself around their relationship, or I could start to see something different. And I started to see something different. I mean, I saw like how much my mom loves my dad, and it wasn't through words, it was through their actions, and it completely changed me. And I'll say, with every fiber of my being now, I know they love one another, even when they say they don't, which they do say that. I know they do. Like, I can feel it. And when I got that, it changed me in my relationship forever, because I didn't expect him to be this thing that was an ideal in my head, or how I was trying to protect us from it not lasting. I let that go completely. And he is now totally stepped into being we are on the same page spiritually and culturally, where we weren't before, but we are now. But he had space to step into that, because I completely let it go. And it wasn't one of those like self-help things where you're like constantly telling yourself, let it go, let it go. No, it was dissolved.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's the opposite question if you idealize your parents' relationship?
Yeah, so the question is, what were the problems? Because emotionally, you actually need to hear how
that it wasn't all perfect all the time. Yeah. That's really brilliant. I love that. And so, gosh, I could
really quickly, how connected the 4 love types? Because you did say that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that.
Okay, great. So the way that it's all connected is there are 4 types, and even as I say them, you could potentially know what you are, but I'll challenge you on that. I was the fixer. So there's the fixer, the nurturer, the idealist, and the doubter. And you know what type you are, and it's actually associated to your connection with your mom and dad. And that tells you what type you are. So
Oh, I love it.
that's how it's connected. Yeah.
I'm so curious. I'm like, okay, so the fixer, the nurturer, what were the other two?
Idealist
And the doubter.
doubter.
Oh, so interesting. Okay, well, I'm taking the quiz. Because there's a quiz, right? So tell us about the quiz and how our listeners and readers can find out what love type they are.
Yes. So basically, it's just a really quick quiz about your connection with your mom and your dad. And there's like a chart where you can see where you fall into, which type you fall into. And then there's an explanation of every type. So there's an explanation of the nurture and what ways that you show up in love and in relationships. And how sometimes, like, for example, the nurture can be very giving and also sometimes mothering. And how that mothering quality in a relationship doesn't allow them to show up as a woman in her like fullest form. And it actually doesn't allow a man to show up in his form because the mothering blocks that, right? Or like the nurturer is giving, but they give so much because all they're expecting is a little bit in return, and they can give even more. So like, what are the tendencies that have us push love away in those different aspects? And they're very powerful. Like, I would never want a nurturer to not be a nurturer, right? I want her to retain who she is. It's such a beautiful gift to the world. It's just that there are these subtle overcompensations that are happening in love that are not actually letting us feel grounded and centered in it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I can see how powerful that could be, whether you're single or you've been married for a long time, and just, like finding a deeper level of satisfaction in your own experience of your relationship. And I also am super just personally curious if there's crossover between perhaps our relationship in love relationships and our relationship with money and our relationship with our business and career. So I'll be curious. We're going to have the link in the article for you. Just be sure to scroll to the bottom and grab that link, and you can take the quiz to find out your love type. And it would be a fun conversation to have in the Business Heroine Facebook group is, what correlations do you see between your love type and your business? That would just allow me to geek out with you. So we'll see what emerges there. Yeah.
It's so true, right? Like, because even in my business, I can show up as like I'm trying to fix everything, right? On my team, for example. Like, okay, I'll dive in and make this happen. I'll dive in and it's not empowering for them sometimes. Right. So like, there are absolutely ways that this translates into business and how you handle your business and your team and everything that comes along with that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, more and more, I'm just learning we heal one aspect of our lives and the other aspects of our lives are benefited as well. So whether you're looking for love or you're looking to, experience more love with your with your business or in your career or whatever it is, I think that we should all take this love quiz. So let's do it. Thank you, Kavita, so much. Do you have any final, insights, advice for the business heroines who are tuning in today?
Yeah, I think it's just, my experience has been the more I step into seeing my business as something that is a game, like just something that is like, I'll create a new game in my business and try to play to win, and also not get so wrapped up in every little move that I can't see like the bigger picture, right? That I can attach to my goals and disattach when it no longer serves me to be attached to that goal, right? So I can like change my game whenever I want, and it's my freedom that I've created with my business. I mean, I created it for that in the first place.
Exactly.
And so how can I play in my business to keep creating that? And it is a daily practice, but
yeah,
I've just really stepped into testing and trying things out and seeing what works and seeing what resonates and just keep changing the game.
I love that. Just this concept of play in business. It's like we get to invent it, we get to make it up, which brings us full circle to what we talked about in the beginning here. So it's like if you're playing a game, let's say you're a kid on the playground and you're playing a game and you get bored with it, then you switch it up, or you want to like make it more exciting, you switch it up. And we get to do that with our businesses every step of the way, so that every step of the way we're getting more and more in alignment with our true calling, with our true business. So that is brilliant. Thank you for that insight. And thank you, Business Heroines, for tuning in. And let's take the love quiz, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.
You have been listening to Business Heroine Radio for the entrepreneur who says she will and does. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out what's new at businessheroinemagazine.com today.